I'm Roberta Lavin. Welcome to Chapter 5, Searching the Literature. This chapter has 5 learning objectives. Understand the purpose of a literature search, describe the types of literature reviews and their purposes, explain the search strategy for an effective literature review, identify the available electronic sources and websites most appropriate for literature searches, and discuss critical appraisal of the literature. A literature review is a foundational step in the research process. The purpose of the literature review is to find, read, evaluate, and synthesize a body of literature on a topic or a research question that is of interest to you. To have a good literature review, you're really trying to find out what the state of the science is in a given area. The first thing we do is find out what's already known about a topic, and we do this through a search of the literature review. It helps us identify both the truths and the assumptions of the research. The literature review helps us to identify appropriate research strategies, procedures used in similar studies, and statistical approaches to the analysis of data. Most likely, whatever you're interested in, someone has done something similar before you, and you can learn from what they have done by pulling their research, their articles, and reviewing it. The completed literature review is used to compare what's already known about the research question with the findings of your own study. It adds extra support and context to your findings. So when you come to the discussion portion of a research study, you're able to compare your findings back to the findings of other researchers who have published their studies. There are multiple different types of research. Integrative reviews summarize past empirical and theoretical literature and provide a more comprehensive understanding of a particular phenomenon or healthcare problem. Scoping reviews identify and map available evidence to determine the scope of a body of literature or a topic. They tend to address a broad question and organize information in a manner that makes it possible to identify gaps. Systematic review is a type of research synthesis that are conducted by review groups with specialized skills who set out to identify and retrieve international evidence. Note, international evidence that is relevant to a particular question or questions, and appraise and synthesize this results according to Mon and colleagues. And a meta-analysis was first defined by Glass in 1976 as the statistical analysis of a large collection of analyses results from individual studies. In other words, they're taking all these studies, they're combining the data from the studies, and now they're going to analyze this. This is often statistically complex. It requires you to have access to actual data and then combine things. But I'm sure you're going to run across some of these during the course of the semester. There are basically 5 steps for searching the literature. You identify your question, identify the databases appropriate to your discipline, you search the literature, you keep your references and searches organized, and then you need to set new alerts for new articles. And this will even be important to you during the semester. And I think you'll find it helpful, first of all, just learning to do it, because you'll keep getting those alerts long after the course ends. And if you're set alerts for things that interest you, then you will stay up to date on the literature, which is important in healthcare. The first step is to begin by asking a really well-defined clinical or research question. Remember, it needs to be clear, concise, focused, complex, arguable, and interesting, and you should put it in the PICO format. The second step is determine which databases are appropriate to your research topic. I always recommend that you search at least 3 or 4. Here is a list of some of the common databases used in nursing. You will notice that it includes PubMed, CINAHL, Google Scholar, WorldCat, UpToDate, Native Health Databases, PsycInfo, Educational Research, Web of Science, and the Cochrane Library. I would always say that as nursing students, you should absolutely always include PubMed and CINAHL on your list. Step 3, we use the search strategy to create searches in the databases selected, keeping track of the search strategy that we used all along. Now, this is really important because there are multiple ways to do this. But one way is when you're in PubMed or CINAHL, you have the ability to click the articles you want to save and the language you use to search and export that or email it to yourself. That is a really good way to keep track of what you are doing. You also want to make sure to stay well organized. And staying organized will save you a lot of work over time. And the best way to do this is to invest some time by setting up a reference manager. Depending on where you are studying, you probably have access to some free reference managers like Zotero or Mendeley. There are some commercially available options that a lot of researchers use like EndNotes or RefWorks. It's up to you, but they will save you time. And of course, don't forget to set up your alerts. Some people you can set up alerts in the databases or they use browsing to set up their alerts. It's also possible to follow journals in specific nursing areas that are of interest to you. And you can also set up searches using social media. And many authors actually post their articles on social media. So if you set up search terms for that, then it will pop up in your social media accounts. This is some strategies for search terms, and there are more detailed explanations of how to do this online, and I suggest you take a look at those. But you want to make sure that when you're doing literature searches, you use mesh terms and bowling connectors. The librarian at any school can teach you how to do that. You need to make sure that when you're searching electronic databases, you list in your paper the databases that you searched. It's also a good idea to do ancestry searches. And ancestry searches take a look at the articles that are in a search. So if you pull an article that's of interest and in your area, then you go to the references of that article and you look at the references that person used, and you might start pulling some of those. You can do internet searches, searching Google or Google Scholar using similar terms to what you used in the electronic database. Google Scholar is usually pretty good, and it gets you scholarly work. You have to be careful about Google. It will take you to crazy nonsense websites. It will take you to people that posted their opinion that are not based in fact. I would be really careful about using Google alone unless you really know your area and you are very well able to recognize fact from fiction. Hand searching is when you go into the library and you just page through journals. Very few people do that anymore, although you can do it. Networking is connecting with experts that are interested in the field. That is more possible than it's ever been because of email and social media. And then searching the gray literature. So you can use Google and Google Scholar using the same terms as the electronic databases that you used. You can search websites that are known to be good, like the Department of Health and Human Services, the Centers for Disease Control, and other governmental agencies. And then finally, inclusion and exclusion criteria. You need to decide early on what you're going to include and what you're going to exclude. This includes the date ranges. You do not want to search back 20 years for the most part. Usually 5 to 10 will do. You need to make sure you know what languages you're searching. It doesn't do any good to search a language that you cannot read. And then the types of manuscripts. If you only want research articles, only search for research articles. Don't search for opinion pieces. And finally, be sure to keep your references ordered either topically or chronologically. This is really essential for a systematic search and a thorough analysis of your literature. And finally, you want to be able to critically appraise the literature or a literature review when you come across it. This just lists some questions that you might ask. Does the research build on the body of knowledge? And were the articles that were included, was it current? Was it relative? Were they the mostly research articles and primary sources? Primary sources mean they're published by the researcher that actually did the work. Was the study defined in a way that makes findings valid and reliable? And we will discuss validity and reliability in the coming chapters. Was there a defined and rigorous research process? And is the study unbiased? Did the review search a minimum of 4 databases? Was there a librarian involved? Having a librarian involved in any literature review is critical. They are much more qualified than most other people to make sure that literature searches are unbiased. You want to make sure that the articles used don't skew the findings toward studies with a desired outcome. And then, do the benefits of the research and any flaw outweigh its strengths? Was it well organized and clear? And do the conclusions make sense based on everything you read? You always want to also ask the question, how does this impact clinical decision making? How does it change the field of nursing? You want to make sure that it's based in facts and evidence and free of opinion. Did it draw appropriate conclusions? This isn't saying, did the conclusions make you mad? Did you not like the conclusions? It was saying, did the conclusion flow from the evidence? One more time, think like a scientist. I hope you're starting to begin to change the way you're thinking about what you read and the articles in the published literature. I'm always available in office hours, and you have my contact information.